ship left on the dock for more than 24 hours will be compressed to a cube at the owner's expense. Welcome to Sacred Cow Shipyards.
You cute little humies always come up with the quaintest turns of phrase. For example, there's the army standard of an army marches on its stomach. Basically, if you can't feed your troops, they're not going to march anywhere. And naturally, this extends into the apocryphal quote of amateurs talk tactics while professionals study logistics. Because, once again, if you can have the best tactics in the known universe, but if your army is not adequately equipped, you can't execute it. And this is naturally why hitting supply lines and resupply chains and blah blah blah, so on and so forth, are considered to be such massive wins in any kind of warfare scenario. I mean, even looking at your video games like StarCraft, if you take out the little doohickeys that are doing the mining for you, doesn't matter how many buildings you have and how many troops they can produce, they can't produce shit right now. So this naturally leads to some questions about what your science fiction show armorers were thinking. Because sometimes I just have no idea. And one of the best examples of this general purpose insanity is Stargate Atlantis. Now, for those of y'all who are that far behind on watching science fiction TV shows on your planet, the basic premise of Stargate is that there are these massive rings that generate artificial wormholes that allow them to connect to other rings elsewhere in the galaxy and provide functionally instantaneous transport between the two rings. From that basic premise came the Stargate movie and the Stargate SG-1 series. Now, apparently these Stargates were initially built by a race otherwise known as the Ancients, who gave up their human forms a long, long time ago and ascended to being beings of pure energy. All good and well. There were no physical Ancients in the Milky Way. I don't remember all the stories, honestly. But regardless, at some point during Stargate SG-1, they started getting rumors that your mythical city of Atlantis was actually a real place built by the Ancients. And it was at one point on your planet Earth, but decided to pick itself up and leave, because apparently the Ancients build flying intergalactic cities, and headed over to the Pegasus Galaxy to continue the Ancients' original mission of seeding the universe with life that looks kind of like them, otherwise known as humans. Well, anyways, you humies finally figured out the dialing address, a complicated question about how Stargates know which other Stargate they're calling, basically, for the Atlantis city in the Pegasus Galaxy. Now, naturally, most Stargates are not actually designed for that level of a reach. I mean, intragalactic travel is already kind of a big enough deal. Intergalactic travel is an enormous deal, requiring a significant amount of power, obviously. And due to that significant amount of power, the humans figured they had one shot at going to visit this Atlantis city. They were going to send out an expedition that acknowledged that it was going to be a one-way trip, in all likelihood. Ended up not being, of course, because the story would be kind of boring if that were the case. But the initial expedition figured this was a one-and-done thing. We're going to get there and see what's going on, and we're going to be there. Oh boy. So basically, the entire expedition had to sit down and realize that whatever we're taking with us is what we will have. And we are not going to be resupplied with anything that is like technological, possibly ever. Hopefully we'll be able to grow our own food, do basic stuff like that, and hopefully we'll be able to trade with other planets who have Stargates in the Pegasus Galaxy. There's no guarantee, and they're certainly not going to be making identical equipment to what we have. So we have to take enough spares, enough supplies, enough, well, ammunition. And this is where it all falls apart. Because, of course, while the Stargate Atlantis expedition was a quote-unquote civilian expedition, They took along a military contingent as well to protect them from whatever might be out there, like lurking in the dark, which was just as well, because apparently the Pegasus Galaxy has one really big bad in it. Different conversation. But I really don't understand why they took the firearms they took. And yes, I'm a nerd about your planet's firearms. They're adorable, they're inefficient, they're loud, they're underpowered, they're so quaint in their mechanicalness, but y'all are so very proud of them. So, brief crash course for everyone who is not a firearm nerd to understand some of the terms that I'm using. Caliber describes the diameter of the barrel of the firearm, internal diameter specifically, whereas cartridge describes that vaguely gold-looking thing that you shove into the tube and then makes the explosion that shoots a projectile, otherwise known as a bullet, although most of y'all refer to cartridges as bullets, down the barrel and go off to do whatever it's supposed to be doing. This is an important distinction because, for example, your 223 Remington cartridge and your 22 long rifle cartridges, such bizarre names, have the exact same caliber or near enough for all functional purposes. They're very, very different cartridges, though, and that actually doesn't come up in what we're going to talk about. But the other reason that cartridges are important is because, of course, they go in these boxes you call magazines. They are functionally boxes with a spring inside of them that pushes the cartridges into the firearm as they are being fired. Okay, so logistically, we just talked about two massively important things: cartridges and magazines. If you are going on a one-way trip, not only across the galaxy, but to an entirely disjoint galaxy, where you did not have a cartridge manufacturing facility handy, you would think that you would want to maximize your cartridge commonality and your magazine commonality for all your firearms. I mean, yes, technically, magazines are considered a consumable. They do eventually wear out. If nothing else, the springs give out, depending on how many cycles you put them through. But those are fairly easily repairable, if not outright replaceable, by any kind of industry that can stamp out sheet metal and make springs, which is kind of a basic functionality of basic industry, for example. Cartridges, on the other hand, unless you're planning on, like, attaching what's called brass catchers to all of your firearms and collecting all of the spent cartridges as they get discharged from the firearm, you'll have to find some other planet in the Pegasus Galaxy that can A, make cartridges, and B, feels like retooling all their hardware to match whatever your specifications are, assuming anyone brought, the appropriate blueprints and diagrams to make the ammunition. So yeah, given all of that, you would have thought that the military planners behind this entire abortion would have realized that, hey, we should, make this simple, make this standard, make this, dare I say, universal. Make everything you possibly could run off as few magazine patterns and as few cartridge types as humanly possible. And then they went and did the other thing. You see, the military, your U.S. military, in its infinite wisdom, sent its grunts off to the Pegasus Galaxy with, well, to start with, a Beretta M9. Well, technically it's a Beretta 92 FS for the prop purposes, but military designation versus civilian designation, just whatever. Anyways, it's a 9mm handgun. It uses a 9mm by 19 Parabellum cartridge, and it's basically, well, it was basically, I guess things have changed recently, your U.S. military's standard sidearm. It was everywhere. It is ubiquitous. It has shown up in so many movies on your planet, it is goddamn ridiculous. Personally, I don't like it. But nobody really asked my opinion when y'all are filing requisition reports. So whatever. So I can kind of see, given that it is the standard military sidearm at the time, that this would be the default option. But wait, there's more! Because of course your military did not send your troops off into the Pegasus Galaxy with just sidearms to defend themselves. That would be silly. Right? Right? Right. In addition to the Beretta M9, the Stargate Atlantis team was also given the Fabrique Nationale P90. This is somewhat of a natural decision, given that the P90 basically became the standard rifle for the Stargate SG-1 teams. Well, SG-1 through however many number of teams they have. Whatever. Anyways, the P90 is kind of an interesting little firearm. It uses a magazine that is purely distinctive to its particular platform. Oh, wait. Magazine commonality. Crap! We already failed that test. And it's a bullpup, which basically means that you can achieve a longer barrel length on a shorter firearm than you could if it weren't a bullpup. And it looks cool, which honestly is most of your prop department's primary reason for choosing certain firearms as props. The catch is that it uses a 5.7 by 28 millimeter round. I'm not terribly good at math, but I'm pretty sure 5.7 by 28 is not equivalent to 9 by 19. And, sorry, I missed a detail about cartridges. So 9, of course, is the caliber, 5.7 is a caliber. The by insert number here part is the approximate overall length of the actual case of the cartridge, like the little bit that your firearms eject after they shoot the bullet down range. That's the case. And the 9x19 cartridge, it shoots a projectile that's 9 millimeters in diameter and has a case that is approximately 19 millimeters long. You can do the same math with the 5.7 by 28, except to add complications there, the 9x19 is a straight wall cartridge, whereas the 5.7 by 28 is a bottleneck cartridge, but in the end it doesn't really matter. They're not the same. You already failed both checkpoints. The ammo is not compatible, and the magazines are not compatible. In no way, shape, or form. And this is fundamentally frustrating because, of course, Fabrique Nationale makes a pistol that takes the 5.7 by 28 round. It's called the 5.7. It's really not an imaginative name when you get right down to it. I guess M9 isn't either, given it's a 9mm pistol. Anyways, there was a pistol that did take the same round as the rifles they were shipped off with. Why weren't they shipped off with a compatible pistol? Or, conversely, why weren't they shipped off with a compatible rifle? There is no shortage, especially now, although less so back then, of rifles and carbines and submachine guns and all kinds of other things that fill into that basic shape profile of firearms that take 9mm rounds. Why not send them one of those? I mean, it's not the best round out of a rifle. 5.7 is an actually pretty impressive round out of a rifle. But still, commonality. This is a one-way trip. You ain't getting no more ammo. Oh, but wait. It gets so much worse from there. In addition to the Beretta M9s and the FNP90s, the Stargate Atlantis military team was sent through with what were supposed to be M249s, but are actually Daewoo K3s just dressed up to look like M249s. Anyways, M249 is a squad automatic weapon, I believe, which basically means it's a belt-fed machine gun that is meant to lay the f***ing hurt on someone else. They're fun that way. The problem is these f***ers take 5.56 by 45 millimeter NATO rounds. Well, the NATO part's not actually relevant. The point is, it's 5.56 caliber, 45 millimeter case length, and still a third caliber. Great maker on a rocket-propelled pogo stick, why did they send these imbeciles to the Pegasus Galaxy on a one-way trip with 3 different calibers and magazine systems? I mean, belts aren't technically magazines, but that's beside the point! Okay. Deep breath, if I had lungs, moving on. The point is, there were solutions to this problem. Admittedly, there were not as many solutions when Stargate Atlantis aired as there are now, but there were still solutions. First off, as mentioned previously, there is the terribly unimaginatively named FN57 pistol that at least uses the same caliber as the P90s that they were using otherwise. That doesn't solve the squad automatic weapon problem, but if you want to go at it from that angle, the M249 or Daewoo, whatever the hell replacement they used, takes .223 or 5.56 caliber ammunition. Fine. Give them the standard M16 analog, whatever model of that particular platform y'all are on right now. In fact, I'm pretty sure there's an M249 that takes, Stanag magazines. So that would actually solve both the caliber/cartridge problem and the magazine problem. At least for the squad automatic weapons and the rifles. The .223 pistols are kind of big and wouldn't really be a suitable sidearm. Doing the transition from sidearm to rifle to squad automatic weapon I don't know if there's actually a good solution for that. But even so, if you're wedded to the idea of them using a 9mm pistol as a sidearm, then give them a 9mm carbine or submachine gun. This is not hard. I mean, the MP5 is like the standard submachine gun, and it takes 9mm. Different magazine from the Beretta, but if you wanted to go that route, I'd have to check my chronological logs, but I am fairly certain that there were carbines at the time of Stargate being filmed that would take Glock magazines. So yes, they could roll out with Glocks as their sidearm and then have a carbine that took Glock magazines. Now admittedly, there is no perfect solution for all three types of weapons they took through the Stargate. That's fine. They found the most awesomely, absolutely, bizarrely wrong solution for all of it. And yes, a year into the Stargate Atlantis expedition, the Daedalus finally showed up with its intergalactic hyperdrive bullshit, and they finally got resupplied, and then all of a sudden the main military guy started carrying a 45 instead of a 9mm, and everything got weird. But that's not the point. Again, these people went through the Stargate, planning on going to another galaxy entirely, and not at all being sure that they would ever be resupplied. You would think that if they were thinking, they would have planned ahead about this and simplified their logistic train. Because there was no train. There was simply a drop-off, and that's it. What you got is what you got. And eventually, you're going to run out of something. Unless you, deliberately double up, and whatever you feed into your rifle can also be fed into your saw, or whatever you feed into your pistol can also be fed into your carbine. But they didn't even do that. And yes, I know most people watching these shows don't actually care. They're not sufficiently nerdy in the technical details of firearms to notice or care what is going on. They don't even notice that magazines seem to have infinite numbers of cartridges in them. It's all irrelevant, right? Well, this whole lack of caring thing is showing up in strange places in your planet right now. I mean, for fuck's sake, your United States military, Navy specifically, in the past 2 weeks as of the recording of this episode, has had 2 aircraft carriers with contaminated water supplies. Hard to tell which one's contaminated by what at this point, because your military frequently does not disclose a lot of specific details aside from broad strokes of general purposes. But still, water, the thing you humies need to consume to stay alive. And these literal floating cities contaminated their water supply. Now, of course, the firearms used in some silly-ass science fiction TV show are nowhere near as important as, keeping your sailors wet. Watered? Hydrated? There we go. Hydrated. But the problem with those squishy gray gelatin things you call brains is that once you stop caring, you just kind of stop caring. Once you start glossing over details, you just keep glossing over details. You build these habits, and it's very hard for you to break them. Will putting some thought into what is used as a prop in a science fiction TV show make a difference about that? I have no idea. Certainly wouldn't hurt, though. And more generally to the purposes of what I am talking about, unlike your current reality, fiction has to be believable. People accept reality because they have no choice. It is the reality that they are faced with, and, well, you either accept it or you go insane. When it comes to fiction, you can either accept their nonsense or just not pay attention to it and move on to the next bit of fiction. It's an open market. Not so much with reality. But when your stories start beggaring belief, they may not be paid attention to as much. Is that a risk you want to take? I mean, with the average humie viewing audience, it's a pretty safe bet to say that they don't really care about the specific firearms being used. But how far can you run that? I mean, honestly, the uniforms and body gear in Stargate Atlantis is almost worse than the firearms, but that's a separate conversation entirely. No one seemed to care about either. So it may have been a safe bet, maybe it wasn't. How many people did you lose because of it? Hard to say. How many people noticed something was awry and filed it under didn't care and just continued doing their not caring habit? I don't know. Do you, when you're writing your stories, want to contribute to that, though? Or do you want to write something coherent and cohesive and sensical? Your call. I'll probably bitch about it either way.
And that's all from Sacred Cow Shipyards. Please be advised that any ship left on the dock for more than 24 hours will be compressed to a cube at the owner's expense. Have a nice day.